I loved it. But then it became dumb. It became dumb over time because the attacks didn't make sense. Akane's sword made no sense. So I'm starting to change it. We will have... Let's get into this. We have 10-year-old Adrian, who's playing in the park, kicking around a soccer ball. Then instantly he's hit by an energy blast in the back of the head. He goes, ow! As he turns around to see his bully, and aka Meanie, Akane Ryuki, and their dumb gang with a person I'm not going to mention who has wings, and another one who has and his sister Ryozaki, and they have an entire group in their school. She has purple flames, so she's extra powerful. Actually, no, she has normal fire. Then they attack him and start beating him up. But instantly, a lightning stream, a small lightning bolt, hits Akane, and then, out of nowhere, Ryozaki's hit by a punch. And then the gang is taken out. Akane says, what the heck was that? A boy with yellow and black hair, and a girl with pink hair says, leave him alone! Adrian says, who are you guys? The two say, I'm Alex, the boy says, and the girl says, I'm Remy. He goes, well, thank you, she says, Blake, let's get him! As Blake is the boy who has who is actually Akane's brother, and has an energy beam quirk. I mean, not quirk, but you know what I mean. Energy beam power. And it's red. He goes, as they instantly all attack. There's like a giant battle which Adrian can't stop. And after that, Adrian and Thing became best friends. Adrian, Blake, Alex, and Remy. If you know where I'm going, you'll know. Blake was the strongest of them, and they all explain their powers. Blake's power is called Energy Beam, along with his sister's power being called Dark Matter. Then we have Alex, whose power is Lock On, or Hunter. I know I'm taking a lot from Unordinary, but I could care less. I'm probably gonna get a copyright strike, but whatever. I hope I do. I'm too small of a channel actually to become copyright striked. So yeah. With this, we'd have 3 years later, actually no, 5 years later when they're 15. They're gonna go to they're all gonna go to the prestigious high school called, drumroll please, Ryozaki High. Yeah, it's a very prestigious high school. It's very amazing, actually, with various students who are very nice. And they always have an event at the beginning of the year. A couple of weeks after the first day, they have an event which is called the tournament. It's just called simply tournament, which is tournament. And it's where all the students in the school, out of all the first years who are in the school, out of the class A, B, C, and D, will all duke it out in one-on-one solo matches. The winners will take all. And it's the summer before it starts. Akane says, losers, I better not see any of you show up at Ryozaki High. I'll kill you all if there is. If you are. Blake says, she's a jerk. Remy and Alex sigh, saying, shouldn't we be the one to say it? He goes, whatever. He says, we should be training. Adrian says, I don't know if I'm even gonna make it. He goes, I still don't have a power. He says, no worry, bro. You'll get one eventually. Do you guys want to do some training? Adrian says, at least if I know martial arts or some kind of fighting, I could at least do something. Adrian says, what if I get a weapon? He says, why don't we all go on our own journeys after after training for about a month, then through June and July, then through July and August, and then September, we'll all go to our own separate adventures and do our own training. Blake says. Adrian says, smart idea. As they start to do 1 month of training, of doing races, punching bags, all kinds of anger tests, and also their calmness. They're also meditating. Adrian decides that he's going to head out now. Adrian's decided on a weapon, and it's not a bow or like a spear. It's a sword. He goes somewhere. He goes to a certain place in the Foggy Mountains. When he finally makes it up, it's clear as day and it's beautiful. There's pink cherry tree. There's one giant pink cherry tree where an old man is sitting there meditating. He says, "Are you Mr. Wren?" He opens his eyes saying, "Who goes there?" He says, "My name is Adrian Kadoku and I'm here to make a sword and become a master with it." He goes, "I only treat people with powers." He goes, "I have a power." He says in his head, "I know this boy doesn't have power. Guess I'll trust him." He goes, "Let's go, boy. Here's a wooden sword. Now come at me with it." He goes, okay, as he rushes at him, tries to swing it at him, but the old man, Wren, smacks it out of his hand and puts a sword to his throat, saying, "You're not good enough. More. We will be doing constant practice and training until you're ready." As they're doing this daily, Adrian's most diet is cherries and strawberries and fruits and vegetables. Once he's done, he's finally ready. He says, "There's an asteroid coming in 20 days. I want you to go find it and mine the material. It's called nether." Yeah, nether and like netherite. He goes, it's almost unbreakable material, and it's a black grayish material that's unbreakable. Forge that into a sword and you'll be ready. Adrian runs off and finds the meteor and pulls out a pickaxe that he was given to and starts breaking it down, finding the right materials. He says, "There's no netherite," but then he finds a piece and decides that he'll make a combination of space meteor, of space rock, and netherite. He combines it into a nice sword, which is very powerful. They all meet back up in their spot as Adrian says, "I'm now a sword master. I can really use it." As Blake says, "We're proud of you, man." Alex says, "Yeah. Now we should do a couple of things before we start. Let's look at this school's old battles. We should gain some experience." Remy says, "Alex, it's 9 o'clock at night, which basically we have to go to bed an hour later, and we all have to go home." He goes, "Fine." As then when he gets home, his mom, Shio, says, "Where have you been for the last 3 months, young man?" He goes, "I've been up at the Cherry Mountain." She goes, "What have you learned?" He goes, "I learned how to be a swordsman, Chip." He goes, "I'm proud of you. Now go to your room. You already ate, didn't you?" He goes, "Yep." She goes, "You look more fit. Now, to your room." He goes, "Fine." As he gets in there, he sits down and places his sword on the ground, hides and slips it under his bed so no one else sees it. When he gets up in the morning, he eats breakfast, grabs his sword and slings it around his arm, and says, "I'm ready to go, Mom." And she says, "Good luck." Oh, and Ryozaki, get up. She says, "Shiozaki, get up, now." He says, "What do you want, old hag?" He says, "You dare disrespect your mother? Get to school." "Your brother's already left." She says, "Is he going to my school?" She goes, "It's not your school." He goes, "He's weak." She says, "He'll be in a storm if you ever try and fight him. Now get going." She says, "Fine, old hag." As then she gets a smack to the face and then she walks to school. Adrian's already there with his friends, Blake, Remy, and Alex. They're all heading in. But first they have to take an entrance exam, which is first math, then first is their learning, then is their combat. When they finish, Adrian's already ready. Adrian pulls out a sword going, ugh. Remy says, cool sword. He goes, thanks. Then he cuts robots. He cuts all kinds of robots in half. Then he finally defeats all of them. And that's it. And after that, they all pass and get in to Class C. A pretty decent class. Their teacher, Mr. Johnston, is very powerful, and his ability is called Locked-in Strength. He uses these little ball things that fit right into the slits of his fingers, as he can smack people away with them, and then control them into a psychic energy. He says, hello class, let me take attendance. As he goes, alright, number 1, Akane Ryuki. He goes, here. He says, Shiozaki Kadoku. She goes, here. He says, Adrian Kadoku. He goes, here. Then he says, Alex Nano. He goes, here. He says, Remy. She goes, here. He says, Blake. They say, here. And then he says, Akira. He goes, yep, here. He says, just say here, boy. I'm going to knock the sense into all of you. We still have a couple more to go. He says, Nen. As he goes, here. He goes, then he says after that, Nanazaki. He goes, here. She says, Emma. She goes, here. Then he says, for the final one, Shima, are you here? He goes, yes, sir. As he goes, I like your attitude. You're now the favorite student. Everyone just sighs as they go, ah. He goes, alright, class, and now we're going to get started with the first day, which is just going to be simple stuff. Ryozaki says, are you kidding me? I came here to fight. Shiozaki says, I came here to fight, not learn. He says, I didn't say how we were going to learn. We're learning how to control our powers, so you guys can grow up to be great heroes that can save the world from all this dastardliness. Our rival school is Shira, an insanely powerful school which surpasses us in all records. They're the top 5 leaders in the Spring Nationals. They're way better than us. So that's why you guys are actually called the Class of Promise, to defeat Shira. Adrian says, I like that. Shiozaki says, of course you would, because you're an idiot. He said, Mr. Johnson says, Mrs. Kadoku. Miss Kadoku, do you mind repeating that? As his eyes are red. She goes, no, sir. He goes, that's what I like to hear. Now, the next thing, let's get going, class. They head outside and start to train. He says, our first sparring match, Akane Ryuki versus Adrian Kadoku. These two are clashing. She says, how are you this powerful? He says, it's called training, Akane. As he kicks her back, then pulls out his blade. He's cutting all of her energy blasts in half, but then she starts to create bigger ones, but she's struggling to crack. He can even crack a hole into them. But then he's starting to get hit. He goes, damn it. He pulls out his sword and he chews his sword back in. Then he starts to throw smoke bombs to get out of the way. She goes, ah, and powers up. Her aura, not her aura, but her energy flares as she goes, ah. Instantly a giant storm comes, With that power launching Adrian back, he unsheathes his sword and slams it into the ground to stay afloat. But then his sword snaps in half. He goes, "Dang it!" He pulls out some kunai and throws them, which just bounce off of her. Because of how powerful she is right now, she launches a full-powered energy beam, which Adrian tries to cut through with his basic dagger, then realizes the secret technique that Old Man Ren showed him. He grabs the piece of the broken sword, tosses it up in the air, and then uses both of feet to connect it back together. He's got a brand new sword again, as then he goes in and goes, "Ah!" as he's cutting the energy blade beams in half. Then she launches a last giant energy beam, which he puts his sword in front of, which actually absorbs the attack. As he's ready, he's about to slash her, but the energy fades away as she launches one fatal energy blast, which hits him in the stomach, knocking him out. And Akane's declared the winner. And that's it for this episode.